Hello, and welcome to today's episode of Final Girl Moments. Before we cover Midsommar, I'd like to issue a general trigger warning. If you or any loved ones that you know watching this video are uncomfortable with the ideas of fire, disembowelment, dismemberment, suicide, suicidal ideation, murder, or death, please click off of this video and hopefully pick something of a little bit lighter subject matter. While this series is meant to entertain, it is never meant to make anyone uncomfortable. So please take time to take care of yourself. I will leave some links down below for some hotlines, like including the suicide hotline and the domestic violence hotline. If you or a loved one needs help, please feel free to reach out. I hope you enjoy the video. Hello everybody, and welcome to episode 2 of Final Girl Moments. I'm your host, Bella McCullough, and today we will be covering a personal favorite of mine, Midsommar. While I do love this movie, I don't always love the characters, and I think that's what makes it really interesting. I think it's a visually gorgeous film, and I think the nuance and the story behind it are so incredibly interesting, but I also, as a very opinionated person, some might say a D1 yapper, freaking hate Dani and Christian's relationship. Because I like Dani as a character. I think the way she unpacks her grief is beautiful. But the way she stays behind Christian and stays by her side in this moment is so incredibly frustrating that I just want to unpack that in her time as a final girl. So grab some popcorn, get all cozy, and let's get started talking about Midsommar. So before we get started talking about the plot and the overall arc of the film, I want to talk about my qualifications, and then let's talk a little bit about the producers of this movie and the director. So I have been a horror fan since I was 11, 12. My first movie I ever watched from the horror genre was Annabelle, and that was traumatizing and terrifying for me. But I watch a lot of movies, and I have a lot of time to watch a lot of movies. And when I watch them, I like to analyze them and understand where these characters are coming from and really just dive deep into who they are as people. But I'm also an extremely opinionated person. If you know me personally, I'm a yapper, and I'm loud about it. So, I have formed very extreme opinions, especially as a feminist, about final girls. And so the point of this series is to unpack these final girls and first decide whether they're a final girl or not. Number 2, what do I like about them? What do I not like about them? So as we kind of get started, I want to talk about A24. So A24 is a smaller movie producer. They have created films like Everyone, Everywhere, All at Once. That's a whole mouthful. Great, really great movie. Absolutely cried. Hot dog fingers for life. But they've also created horror films like this, Midsommar. And so this was written and directed by Ari Aster, and Florence Pugh and Jack Reynor are our leading characters. So they play Dani and Christian. This film follows Dani mainly, as well as her friends Christian, Josh, and Mark. And so this group of friends decides to travel to Sweden, and that's where stuff goes bad. But kind of backtracking, the film starts with this shot of Dani just sobbing uncontrollably, and we don't really have any context to why. And so as we see it, we start seeing messages from her sister, Terry, who later on in the next 5 minutes we find out has killed her and her parents with carbon monoxide poisoning. And this has absolutely traumatized and devastated Dani because this is her family. This is the only people in her life left. And so this is extremely hard for her, and we see that impact later on as she is hanging out with Christian. And Christian is planning on breaking up with her, especially through her grief, because he is tired of it. And so Mark, Josh, and Christian are all planning to go to Sweden for Mark's thesis study on Midsommar and Midsommar celebrations and customs. They were invited by Pelle to the Midsommar celebration with Harga, which is the cult that we focus on throughout this film. So as Christian was planning on breaking up with Dani, he ends up inviting her to this travel and to this event. And he's not planning on her coming. He tells his friends, I don't think she's actually going to come. And this is all said behind Dani's back, which is honestly, I'm going to get real with you before we get started. I absolutely despise Christian as a character. And I think that, oh, he's flawed. Oh, he was being manipulated. Yes, but he was also about to break this woman's heart after her family died. And I frankly cannot respect a man who does that. Besides the point. So as they travel to Sweden and they make it to Harga, the cult with Pelle, they run into a couple. I have notes because sometimes I'm terrible with names, so I have it written down. They run into a British couple, Simon and Connie. And so with this group, as they travel in, they are given hallucinogenic mushrooms just to kind of welcome them into this group. And that's where Dani starts having these horrific visions and this fear being instilled in her. She sees the death of her parents and her sister and is visualizing and seeing this happen over and over again for her. And this is extremely traumatizing. So as the film continues on, we see more and more very strange things. So Pelle and the other members explain to them that they see their ages as seasons. So summer is your youth up until 36, fall is your labor time, and winter past around like 56 is your wisdom years. So it begs the question, and Dani asks us, what happens after you turn 72? And Pelle answers that they die. They choose to die. And that actually leads up into one of our most important scenes throughout the movie is the suicide of two 72-year-olds. So Dani, Mark, Christian, Josh, Connie, and Connie's partner all go and are invited in this ceremony where they see a older woman and older man jump off a cliff and die. So the woman dies on impact, hitting a rock, splitting her face open. It's an extremely gory scene, and it's traumatizing for Dani. She just sits there in silence as you see her process through that fear and that trauma that she's already seen so much death and experienced so much death. And now she has to go through it again. But then we see the old man who falls to his death and dies, but not before he had broken his leg and was just sitting there suffering. So while everyone has to watch, they sit there and they take a mallet and they smash him in the head. This is an extremely hard scene, and this is where we see people start to kind of realize that this cult is kind of no joke and it's kind of terrifying. So after this, Connie and her partner decide they want to leave. And when they try to do that, they're both driven separately, and we find out eventually that they're dead. They die. They get killed. There's no leaving this area. And so that was a pretty fun revelation for me. At least that's where I thought they had died. I'm 90% sure they were the victims. I kind of I fell asleep for part of it. I've seen this movie like 4 or 5 times, but it's been a minute. But they died. They get killed one by one. But after this, Josh decides to do his thesis on Hargard and Midsommar specifically. And during this time, they are arguing all together, like there's just unrest. And then Mark goes to use the restroom and ends up using the restroom on a ceremonial tree that represents the dead. And this is where more problems start for our core group, our core 4. Mark is then lured away and murdered, and he is basically skinned. His face is skinned off of him, and that was pretty dang gross. But during that time, Josh also decides that he is going to do his thesis focusing on that, like I said before. So Josh sneaks out in the middle of the night, and he goes to take pictures of a sacred book. And so someone in the cult discovers him, and while wearing Mark's skinned face, bludgeons him to death. And that is death number 4 of this group. I was going to say number 2 of the core 4, and then 4 in total of the group. So now it's just Christian and Dani. And while their relationship is still strained, Dani still loves Christian. Like, that is her man's, that is her go-to or ride or die. And so after the May Queen dance, like the May dance, they've taken hallucinogenic tea. They're kind of tripping. I'm going to be real, they're tripping balls. Like Dani is communicating through dance, and like Christian is seeing stuff when people clap. Dani is crowned May Queen, and she's taken away to go like get ready for the celebration, while Josh is lured away to basically participate in this ritual to impregnate a young woman who has just turned of age. And so during this ritual, which involves like 8 women and an old lady who is like mimicking what goodness gracious, what Christian is doing, Dani sees it. And so Dani is sobbing, and the cult members are joining her, sobbing, feeling her pain. And from there, we start to realize something is about to go on, and something not good is about to go on. And Dani is very much a key component of that. So after Christian realizes what he's done, he runs out completely naked and is caught and drugged after he discovers everyone else has been murdered and is being prepared for ritual sacrifice. And so when it is time for the May Queen, they are told that 9 people must be sacrificed. The 4 outsiders, which were killed, the 2 that sacrificed themselves, the 2 that volunteered, and there needs to be 1 more. And so that is decided through either a random, basically, member being brought out of like a bingo cage, you know, the ones they like turn and then they pull out like a number and they're like E7 and they're like bingo. No, this one is for sacrificial rituals. It was that or Christian. And so Dani, while wearing this beautiful gown of flowers and like has been welcomed into this group, sits there and decides between her boyfriend, who has just cheated on her and she's seen it, and this random member of the cult. She ends up choosing her boyfriend, and he is then taken and put inside a bear who has been basically disemboweled and prepared for sacrifice. And so this sacrifice is done every 90 years during Midsommar in order to ward off evil spirits. So they take all of these sacrifices, like who are like formed like angels of death, the dead bodies are all prepped and planned for murder. Or not murder, sacrifice. And so they put Christian in the middle, and they light him on fire, they light everyone else on fire, and the triangle burns down. We see the end of the movie with Dani smiling, and we can kind of tell that that was symbolic for her saying goodbye to her grief and being welcomed into a new family. So that was a lot. We can unpack that was quite a bit, and that was a bigger plot synopsis than episode 1, but I feel like explaining the plot to everybody is really going to help us understand where these characters are coming from. So let's get started on our rating system. So as we get into this next part, I'm going to explain what a final girl is. A final girl is somebody like Sidney Prescott, who has absolutely been devastated and had to survive heck and back in order to get through the film. They're the person left absolutely traumatized by the end of this film. And so I rate most of my final girls, well, all of my final girls, on a 4 key scale. Bella's For key scale, I'm trying to sing. I'm tired. I think it's funny. No one's gonna laugh. You're welcome. But basically, I'm rating her on 4 scales, and this is all based on my opinion. If you guys disagree, you can put it down in the comments and let me know. But I kind of rated this through how I feel about these final girls. And so number 1 is competency. Is she competent? Does she have her life together? Does she have things figured out? Number 2, skills. Does she have the skills to survive this movie? Number 3, bad bitchery. Is she a bad bitch? Does she slay? Does she eat? And has she ate and left no crumbs? Number 4, do I think she's a final girl? Honestly, that's really self-explanatory. Do I think she's actually a final girl? And so each of these are rated out of 10. And then I do my handy dandy math. And you need to score a 30 out of 40 in order to be considered a final girl. So let's get started. I have my handy dandy calculator here. Let's get right into it. So number 1, competency. This is hard because I really do respect Dani as a character. But she's also staying with a man that treats her like absolute dog doo-doo. And so for that, she gets a 2 out of 10 on competency. Number 2, skills. I mean, she's pretty dang smart. She's got good personable skills. She's a communicator. She's pretty dang smart. And she knows where she's at and she knows how she's feeling. So I'm going to give her a nice 8 on skills. Bad bitchery. Who stays with a man that literally is going to break up with you because you're sad? That's not fair to you. That's not fair to anybody. She gets a 1 on bad bitchery. And I'm sorry, Dani. You're one of my favorite characters. But, that's just, And number 4, do I think she's actually a final girl? I don't think that Dani is a final girl because she kind of joins the cult. She just kind of full sends it. I don't think that really constitutes. So I'm going to give her a 2 because she does survive. All of her family and friends are dead. I've got to give her something. So that brings our final score to a 13 out of 40, which unfortunately means Dani is not a final girl. And while this is really unfortunate, I still really do think she is an amazing female character. And just this film in general is so visually gorgeous. And the meaning behind it and its exploration of grief is really, really interesting. And I think it's a good watch. So I would recommend watching it. Even if you're mad she's not a final girl or it's whatever, I recommend watching this film to anybody who is interested. Let me know what you guys think about my opinion of this film down below. Leave a comment, leave a like. If you haven't already, you should follow me on all my socials. I'll put them all right here. I have TikTok and Instagram. Sometimes there'll be fun content on there. Sometimes there won't be. Who knows? If you guys have any other questions or suggestions, leave them down below. But I'm going to reveal what we are covering next week. Drum roll. I'm going to add drum roll sound effects right here. We are covering Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And then the week after that, we will be covering Terrifier 2, which I personally think is the better of the Terrifier films, but don't even get me started. That's a whole rant, not for today. But I hope you guys enjoyed watching, and thank you so much to all of my supporters and all of my help. Have a great rest of your day, and stay spooky. Stay spooky.